There's a big debate at the moment whether it should be development corporation-led or enhanced local authorities. I think there's a role for both, really. You look at the pace at which these new towns will need to deliver to sort of garner the economies of scale, but also to meet the need that's out there. And that's what Stevenage benefited from back in the day. Sadly, some of the new towns, 30 or so in total during the 1980s, there's a massive sell-off of public infrastructure. Town centres, commercial areas were sold because government policy changed. Councils were left in a position where they had to do long-term land assembly to try and get those back into control so that they could effect change, and that adds to the public purse. It adds to the time that people have to wait to see prosperity return to an area, and it just sadly creates a downward spiral that then takes a long time to resolve.
Hello, I'm Toby Fox from 1.5 Million New Homes, the Local Government Challenge, sponsored by Redloft and by Bugler Developments. And I'm visiting a different council every month to find out what works and what needs to change to get more homes built. And this month, I'm in Stevenage, and I'm visiting Ahmed from Stevenage Borough Council to talk about new towns. The government wants to bring 12 new towns forward, each of 10,000 or more new homes. But of course, it's been done before, and Stevenage was one of the first new towns. So what lessons can we learn from how that's gone? So I'm here with Ahmed from Stevenage Borough Council, the day after the launch of Stantec's report, New Towns Creating Communities and Building Trust, which Sir Michael Lyons presented in London last night. Ash, you've had a chance to have a look through this. As the steward of a new town in Stevenage, what do you make of the lessons that are being drawn here for new towns coming forward?
Yeah, no, I thought it's quite concise and it homes in on some of the key issues. Two of which I'll draw on now. One is that it talks about the essential need for having long-term vision and stewardship for any new designated new town or development that's created, and that's really key, because at the start there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of funding available, and there's a lot of impetus and drive to get things done, but town needs to evolve with its people, things change, and to be able to actually effectively manage that, you need to have a coherent sort of strategy, governance in place, and funding. And that's one of the key things that stands out for me. And there's the example of Letchworth Garden City that actually has a heritage trust that generates income and revenue from retail assets and commercial portfolio that looks after the area, the character of the area. It creates new facilities as well, renews things, so that actually when you walk around there you feel immense pride. And that's really key for any new development that takes place now, particularly if it's on scale. People need to feel pride in that area, and to do that, yeah, you need that stewardship role and that governance in place.
There's something else, isn't there, around those original new towns? You mentioned Letchworth, about the ownership of the assets that's important in that stewardship.
Yeah, absolutely. So because you want to create that revenue stream to have that long-term vision and long-term planning to look after an area. Sadly, some of the new towns, 30 or so in total during the 1980s, there's a massive sell-off of public infrastructure. Town centres, commercial areas were sold because government policy changed. And then actually, as a place evolves, as the population evolves, councils were left in a position where they had to do long-term land assembly to try and get those back into control so that they could effect change. And that adds to the public purse. It adds to the time that people have to wait to see prosperity return to an area. And it just sadly creates a downward spiral that then takes a long time to resolve. But one of the other interesting things in that report was the item that actually some people don't really know what they want in a new town.
Yeah, so there was this conflicting evidence, wasn't there? There was a survey of what would make you live in a particular town, and a lot of people said they responded well to sort of environmental aspects, environmentally friendly factors, but rated very, very, very lowly the provision of EV chargers for cars, for example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what that tells me is that actually there's a big piece that stakeholders need to do in talking to people and informing them about what their choices and what their desires, what ramifications that has for the environment, and what a place would look like and what its impact will be. So really a big role for consultation and communication with residents to try and attract them into designing the right places, but then to actually live there.
And a big role for councils as well. So another of the comments here was developers should also engage with councils elsewhere in the UK that preside over existing new towns. They will have unique perspectives on what has worked and factors to consider from the early design stages. So you are one of those stewards presiding over an existing new town. What do you have to tell them?
There's a big debate at the moment whether it should be development corporation led or enhanced local authorities. I think there's a role for both, really. You look at the pace at which these new towns will need to deliver to sort of garner the economies of scale, but also to meet the need that's out there. You're going to need a development corporation style model that's got clear focus, and that's what Stevenage benefited from back in the day, and other new towns as well. So the development corporations can do land assembly, have clear focus, not be distracted by other important environmental or political considerations. But then local councils do know how to engage with the local community. They have a better handle on amenity needs, but also existing local infrastructure like health, education, and really that's going to be integrating all of that in the new towns, the new towns, as it were, is an important part of what people have to focus on.
And there's something about scale as well, isn't there? About the capacity of a development corporation to develop new homes on the scale that's required.
Yeah. I was reading at its peak, you'll remember, Milton Keynes was delivering around 3,000 homes a year. The new towns combined at their peak were delivering about 12,000 homes, new homes a year. But if you look at the analysis this year and last year of the 70 top sites that developers are leading on, and the average figure is around 380 homes. That's a big difference in what they're doing at the moment, and part of that's self-interest and economics, because they don't want to flood the market.
They need to keep the prices stable so that they can make a profit.
Absolutely, yeah. But a big element of that also is about the skills and the capacity as well, and you need a development corporation style model that can break through through those barriers, go beyond those economic needs. And another crucial aspect of it is really you look at what's gone on this year. We've seen private enterprises nationalising the rail service. Thames Water came close to being put back into public ownership. Utility and infrastructure is in need of work in this country, and it's the development corporation model that can best understand what utility provision exists in an area rather than a local council. So I think there's a role for both.
Okay, Ash, so as a steward of a new town, of Stevenage, as the development director there, what are the lessons that you'd like to pass on about what should have been done differently in creating Stevenage that's given you a headache now in curating it and looking after it?
I think for me, looking at Stevenage and across the other neighbouring new towns as well that are in Essex, one of the key things that's really been a problem is how infrastructure's failed and become in need of renewal at the same time, whether it be schools, whether it be housing stock. One of the key things that really would have benefited those new towns is having a really good, strong covenant and asset management strategy in place that would allow them to have the strategic oversight, but also the funding needed to make those investments at a timely fashion. Rather, what's happened is councils have had to make do with limited resources, and it's been a patchwork repair rather than a holistic change, because towns do need to adapt. Population changes, the residents' needs change, so you need that flexibility. Of course, connected to all this maybe is that none of us really know exactly what the environment's going to be in 20, 30 years' time. New towns are going to be designed and start delivering over the next 5, 10 years before you really see notable difference. But we're in a climate where planetary health is on people's minds. Yep.
Yep.
AI is having a
Yeah.
big impact on industry, on skills and jobs as well. So there's going to have to be some future stargazing, as it were, by the New Towns Commission to see, the new task force, I should say, get their name right, about what exactly is needed and forecasting what people's needs are going to be, because we need places that are adaptable, without having to take a bulldozer to them, as has been the case in some cases like Thamesmead, Harlow, Stevenage in estate regeneration.
Do you think that's really possible to design a place for circumstances and environments that we don't understand, don't know we're going to need, for the future, the unknown future? Is that really feasible?
So, I mean, one of the advantages we've got now that the new towns didn't have back in the 50s is that there's far more materials available. So if you're certain that, we need a house for 100 years or 150 years, then you use materials that are going to last that length of time. But if, however, we want spaces for retail, and retail is an evolving sort of commodity at the moment, and it might not be needed in 20 years, then you build it accordingly, don't you? Student accommodation's another example. I'm fascinated by the fact that you have these towns where universities and higher education's crying out for investment and money, yet the students flock into homes that are turned into HMOs by landlords, so they get the actual revenue from there. So if we design places with institutional needs for accommodation, like hospitals or educational establishments, it's nice to think that they could be designed in a way where the revenue from those actually is kept insular within that organisation, but also that it's designed for a period that's needed. No need to knock down a house or convert it into a HMO, because that has an impact on the building but also the environment.
Ahmed, from your perspective as Development Director at Stevenage Borough Council and your insights on new towns, thank you very much indeed. And thanks for your role in getting 1.5 million new homes built.
Thank you, Toby.
So that's it for another episode of 1.5 Million New Homes, the local government challenge, sponsored by Redloft and by Bugler Developments. But we are going to be back with more from Stevenage in just a few days. So click subscribe and you won't miss that. And do click like as well. We'll be very grateful. See you next time. Thank you.